In 1963, in Cappadocia, a region in what is now Turkey, a man renovating his house knocked down a wall and found nothing. Well, not exactly nothing. First he found an empty space. Then he realized that the space was not a void, but a vast network of what were later recognized as living areas that could accommodate thousands of people living together underground. Churches, schools, graveyards, kitchens, bathrooms, food and beverage storage areas. This city is called C.H.U.D.S. Its lowest levels are at around 250 feet below the ground, carved out of the natural volcanic detritus of the countryside. A network of 12 ventilation shafts feeding thousands of smaller tubes allowed fresh air into the caverns, and an underground river irrigates the city with fresh water. The underground river of C.H.U.D.S is directly accessible from its lowest level. Abandoned artifacts such as grain mills and storage containers are scattered around C.H.U.D.S. Taken as a whole, the 250 feet below ground are organized in 18 descending stories, similar to an upside-down modern collection of condominiums, but with much better protection against the elements or invaders. Individual families and entire levels have massive circular stone doors weighing thousands of pounds that one can roll open and shut from the inside and wedge shut if you need to, and are smooth-faced and virtually impossible to open from the outside. Escape routes were also located on each level, allowing a citywide evacuation if necessary. Pitfalls are located in several passages as well, so don't stray off the path. The path? You can go and visit several of these underground cities yourself, as C.H.U.D.S is one of hundreds, and maybe get a sense of what it was like to live in a fortified volcanic burrow. Excavating C.H.U.D.S led to the discovery of 100 other entrances in the surrounding area. Since C.H.U.D.S was found, 200 other towns have been identified and 24 others have been partially excavated and explored. The geology of these caves is very interesting and lent the underground town some degree of natural architecture. Many volcanic eruptions happened in and around Cappadocia, resulting in a very light, hard deposited mixture of dust and ash that was easily excavated when moistened but rapidly hardened when dried. A German team of researchers noted during their cave exploration that the underground cities consist of 5 floors and the number of rooms decreases each floor downward, but also that the cities extend 60 meters or about 200 feet down. In pictures with people visiting the caverns, each floor is clearly only 6 or 7 feet high, so I'm not sure how this team resolves the height of the structures and their own size approximation with their claim of a lack of evidence for an existing structure below the 5th floor. There is scant direct and no definitive evidence as to who built the cities or how long ago they were built. Turkish historians maintain that there are literally hundreds of underground cities that have been around as long as anyone remembers. 2,400 years ago, the underground cities were already established and inhabited. Xenophon, a Greek historian, visited several of the cities 2,400 years ago and wrote about the subterranean life he encountered. Quote, "Their houses were underground, the mouth resembling that of a well, but spacious below. There was an entrance dug for the cattle, but the inhabitants descended by ladders. In these houses were goats, sheep, cows, and fowls with their young. All the cattle were maintained within doors with fodder. There was also wheat, barley, and legumes, and beer in jars, according to the manner of the Greeks, assembled together to spend the heat of the day in conversation." End quote. A modern suggestion is that the caves were built by the Hittites or the Phrygians, but without any sort of organic material for carbon dating, and with only Xenophon's limited testimony as to the underground dwellings already being used 2,400 years ago, there is no direct evidence of who built these cities or when they built them. The soil of Cappadocia is, of course, the same today as it was thousands of years ago, And underground hotels and basements are still dug out today by residents. So far, there are 200 known, identified underground towns in Cappadocia. Many are partially covered by modern settlements, or are deep enough that they do not disturb the flat area above them. At ground level, you would not know you were walking atop the sprawling caverns. Due to the lack of archaeological data, there are unresolved disagreements about the nature of these cities. It's said that 20,000 people lived in just C.H.U.D.S, and it's said that only 2,000 people could have comfortably lived there. It's reported that there are 18 stories in C.H.U.D.S, and it's reported that there are 5 stories, each level with fewer rooms than the one above. It's reported that the cities are connected by tunnels, and reported that no complete connecting tunnels have been identified. There are ancient, old, and modern subterranean tunnels connecting sites of significance in many countries, so it is not much of a stretch to imagine that one small province with 200 underground cities, only a few of which have even been partially excavated, could hold connecting passageways. The longest explored tunnel leading away from an underground city is about 100 meters long, which is a long enough distance, heading away from the city, to imply that it was leading somewhere significant. Even the minimal discoveries from the confirmed observations of these cities are fascinating. 200 underground cities or towns, each holding a population of thousands, with ventilated air and irrigated water, each composed of hundreds of defensible and secure homes, plus storage areas, kitchens, bathrooms, and social areas like churches and schools. How long ago were these underground dwellings built? Why were they built? Who built them? The why has at least one confirmed answer. Given, 1, that the fresh air and carbon dioxide ventilation is passive, 2, the food storage areas we know about would run out fairly quickly if made to sustain a population of thousands, and 3, many historical stories of the Cappadocian people fleeing marauders or religious persecution by hiding in the underground towns, it is clear that at least in more modern history, the caves were a safe haven to avoid the likes of the Hittites, a local kingdom that developed and used war chariots to devastating military effect on many domestic and foreign states, establishing a large, although tenuous and violent kingdom that encompassed the borders of what is today Turkey. R.M. Dawkins discovered that, more recently, in 1909, the people of Oxo used the subterranean caverns to avoid the massacre of Adana, a mass killing of 20,000 Armenian Christians by Ottoman Muslims, where the Armenians hid for several days. Today, in Caymakli, another underground city, some tunnels and rooms are used for storage and cellars by local residents. Many entrances to Caymakli are open throughout the town above and easily accessible. With the how and at least part of the why being known, other questions remain. Records and first-hand accounts of underground cities in Cappadocia go back almost 3,000 years, without definitive answers to who originally built them or when they were first built. There have been 200 of these underground communities discovered so far, extending into the earth at least 2 stories each, 40 of which settlements extend 3 stories or further down, that are available to explore, categorize, analyze, record, or just visit. Knowing why hundreds of thousands of people in one province of only 5,000 square kilometers, an area smaller than Connecticut, found it necessary to build hundreds of civil structures large enough to each support a population of thousands, complete with areas for livestock and food storage, plus individual housing units to live in, completely underground, for an undetermined amount of time, would give valuable insight as to how older societies operated and give us a more complete view of the historical and anthropological record. Maybe one artifact in one of those 200 cities would afford us carbon dating to find out how far back their construction took place. Hieroglyphics, tablets, anything could be inside the miles and miles of subterranean communities that humans lived and took shelter in for thousands of years. I want to go.